Salve te omnes, and welcome to Acroasis XLIII, or video 43. Today we're going to be talking about the perfect passive indicative. So first let's review. What is perfect tense? Perfect tense in the active is the form that uses the third principal part and then you take off the I and then you add the endings I, isti, it, imus, istis, erunt. It translates as person, have, or has verbed. It's the simple past. We've used it quite a bit. It's one of the most popular tenses in Latin. Now, passive voice so far, we have been talking about in the present, imperfect, and future passives. They have used the second principal part, just like their active counterparts, and the endings are, ris, tor, more, many, and intor. The present translated as am, is, or are verbed, the imperfect translated as was or were verbed, and the future translated as will be verbed. Now, perfect in the passive is going to be a little different. It's not going to use are, ris, tor, more, many, intor. Instead, it's going to use a different appearance. So, perfect, as well as pluperfect and future perfect, are going to use the fourth principal part. Yes, that's right, we finally get to use the fourth principal part. And it's also going to use a form of the word sum, esse, fui, futorum, which will appear as a second word. So that's right, 2 words this time. The whole verb, 2 words. For example, we saw this already in the last vocabulary slideshow, but liberatus est, he, she, or it has been freed, or he, she, it was freed. This is an example of what it will look like. So now let's take a look and see how it's exactly formed. So we will take the fourth principal part and do nothing to it. Then you will have the present tense of sum, esse, fui, futorum, which will be used as the second word. Now, the fourth principal part is also called the perfect passive participle, and it will change its ending to match the subject, just like a 1-2 adjective changes its ending to match whatever it's modifying. So, when you see that fourth principal part, we will actually use it as a participle. What makes it the perfect passive is the addition of that second word, sum. So, let's take a look at how this will look when we put this in a different form. And of course, the translation, as I said in the previous slide, is going to be has or have been verbed or was or were verbed. So now let's take a look at an example. Libero, liberare, liberavi, liberatus aum, to free. Now that fourth principal part will appear in different ways depending on what book you're using or even what dictionary you're looking at. Some show it as liberatus, and that's it. Others show it as liberatum, and then some give it to you as liberatus aum. Whichever, it's the same. Just subtract a us or um and add us aum if you need to. Liberatus aum sum. So notice the person is now on the second form. So sum is telling you that I am doing the action. So I have been freed is how this would translate. However, we wouldn't supply all 3 forms in a sentence. We would choose the correct us, a, or form depending on the gender of the subject. So if I were saying this sentence, I would say liberata sum because I'm a girl. However, if you were to say this, or magister were to say this, they would say liberatus sum because you're male and so is magister. Similarly, the same principle would work for liberatus aum as you have been freed. You would change depending on who you was. And liberatus aum est, he, she, it has been freed. Liberati I assumus. Now something has happened that's different. Because now we have a plural subject, of course, the endings have had to change to be plural as well. So instead of the nominative singular us, aum endings, now we have the nominative plural I, a endings. So I is used for the masculine, I for the feminine, ae, and a for neuter. Liberati I estis, you all have been freed, and liberati I a sunt, they have been freed. And again, remember that ending will change. It will be e, I, or a depending on who the subject is. And that actually will help you out a lot when it comes to translation, as you're going to see in our example sentences, because it can help point you out to what you should be looking for as your nominative. So now let's take a look at these sententii. Multae feminae in foro a senatoribus liberatae sunt. So now take a look at both multae feminae and liberatae sunt. I've bolded and underlined both of them, and notice how I've highlighted the endings. So liberatae ends in AE, so I know my subject has to be nominative, plural, and feminine. So multae feminae must be my subject in this sentence, because they're both nominative, they're both plural, and they're feminine. Now, of course, you know multae feminae by itself could be a couple different cases, but the addition of this verb in this form has sealed the deal for us and told us that it has to be the subject. Next, beneficium a viris et puellis peratum est. So here we have and showing up for both of those. And then certus vir ab judicio judicis delectatus est. Here, us and are both nominative singular endings, and delectatus is telling us our subject has to be nominative singular. Pause the video, translate these sentences, and resume when you are ready. Okay, so let's go over this. Multae feminae in foro a senatoribus liberatae sunt. So we know we got to start with multae feminae, many women. Liberatae sunt, have been or were freed. In foro, in the forum, a senatoribus, by the senators. So, now let's take a look at the next one. Beneficium a viris et puellis peratum est. So, here we have the good deed or the favor, peratum est, has been prepared or was prepared, a viris et puellis, by the men and girls. Notice we have a lot of a and ab in these sentences, and that's because typically the ablative is actually performing the action. They're the ablatives of agent. And you're going to see this a lot with passive verbs. We've already seen them a lot with passive verbs in the present, imperfect, and future, and you're just going to continue seeing them with the perfect. So now let's take a look at the last sentence. Certus vir ad judicio judicis delectatus est. So here, the sure man was or has been delighted by the judgment, that's ab judicio, of the judge, judicis. That concludes this Acroasis. Make sure you fill in the Google form and come with any questions that you have to class tomorrow. Valete omnes.